The story of Saint Anselm of Canterbury unfolds in a period of significant transition in medieval Europe, where questions of authority, reason, and faith were being actively debated and redefined. His life is not marked by dramatic martyrdom or miraculous spectacle, but by intellectual depth, moral clarity, and a sustained effort to reconcile belief with rational inquiry. Anselm was born in 1033 in the town of Aosta, located in what is now northern Italy. At the time, the region was part of the Kingdom of Burgundy. He was born into a noble family. His father, Gandulf, was known for his strict and sometimes harsh temperament, while his mother, Ermenberga, was recognized for her piety and gentleness. This contrast would shape Anselm's early emotional and spiritual development. From a young age, Anselm showed signs of intellectual curiosity and spiritual sensitivity. There is a traditional account that, as a child, he had a dream in which he ascended a mountain and encountered God. Whether interpreted literally or symbolically, this narrative reflects the early formation of his desire to seek divine truth. He initially expressed a desire to enter monastic life, but his father opposed the idea. This resistance delayed his path. After his mother's death, Anselm's relationship with his father deteriorated. Eventually, he left home and spent several years traveling through parts of Europe, including Burgundy and France. This period was marked by uncertainty, but also by intellectual exposure and personal growth. His direction became clearer when he arrived in Normandy. There, he encountered the Abbey of Bec, a monastic center known for its intellectual vitality. At Bec, Anselm met Lanfranc of Pavia, a respected scholar and teacher. This meeting proved decisive. Anselm chose to enter the monastery. He became a Benedictine monk, committing himself to a life structured around prayer, study, and community. The environment at Bec allowed him to develop both spiritually and intellectually. His natural abilities quickly became evident. Within a few years, he was appointed prior. Later, he became abbot. In these roles, Anselm demonstrated a leadership style that combined discipline with moderation. He emphasized understanding over coercion, encouraging monks to internalize their commitments rather than merely comply with rules. At the same time, his intellectual work began to take shape. Anselm is best known for his approach to theology, often summarized by the phrase, faith-seeking understanding. For him, faith was not opposed to reason. Instead, faith provided the foundation upon which reason could build. One of his most influential works is the Proslogion. In this text, he presents what later became known as the ontological argument for the existence of God. Rather than relying on observation of the natural world, Anselm's argument begins with the concept of God itself. He defines God as that than which nothing greater can be conceived. From this definition, he argues that God must exist not only in the mind, but also in reality. While this argument has been debated for centuries, it remains one of the most significant contributions to philosophical theology. Another major work is Cur Deus Homo, Why God Became Man. In this text, Anselm addresses the question of redemption. He argues that human sin creates a debt that cannot be repaid by humanity alone. Only a being who is both divine and human could provide adequate satisfaction. This reasoning leads to a structured explanation of the Incarnation and the role of Christ. Anselm's work is systematic. It reflects an early form of what would later be called scholasticism, the effort to use logical reasoning to explore theological truths. In this sense, he is often considered a precursor to later thinkers such as Thomas Aquinas. However, Anselm's life was not limited to the monastery. His reputation extended beyond Bec, and he became increasingly involved in broader church affairs. After the death of Lanfranc, who had become Archbishop of Canterbury, Anselm was eventually chosen to succeed him. In 1093, he was appointed Archbishop of Canterbury. This position placed him at the center of one of the major conflicts of the time, the struggle between the church and secular rulers over authority. Specifically, the issue was whether kings had the right to appoint bishops and invest them with authority, a dispute known as the investiture controversy. Anselm took a clear position. He supported the authority of the papacy, and opposed the practice of lay investiture by secular rulers. This stance brought him into direct conflict with King William II of England. The tension escalated. Anselm faced pressure to conform to royal expectations, but he refused to compromise on principles he considered essential to the integrity of the Church. As a result, he entered into a period of exile. He left England and spent time in Rome and other parts of Europe. During this exile, he remained active intellectually and maintained communication with church leaders. His position aligned with broader reform movements within the Church, particularly those associated with the papacy. After the death of William II, Anselm returned to England. However, conflict resumed under the new king, Henry I. Once again, the issue of investiture created tension. Anselm again chose exile rather than compromise. Eventually, a resolution was reached. A compromise allowed the king to have a role in the selection of bishops, but without the symbolic act of investiture that represented spiritual authority. This agreement helped define the boundaries between secular and ecclesiastical power. Anselm returned to Canterbury and resumed his duties. His later years were marked by continued teaching, writing, and pastoral care. Despite earlier conflicts, he maintained a consistent approach, clarity of principle combined with measured action. He died in 1109. His legacy continued to grow after his death. He was remembered not only as a theologian, but as a figure who maintained integrity in complex situations. Centuries later, he was formally recognized as a Doctor of the Church by Pope Pius X. This title is given to individuals whose teachings have had a lasting impact on Christian doctrine. Saint Anselm's significance can be understood through several key dimensions. First, his intellectual contribution. He helped establish a method of theological inquiry that integrates faith and reason. His work laid the groundwork for later developments in medieval philosophy. Second, his leadership. As abbot and archbishop, he demonstrated that authority can be exercised without coercion. His approach emphasized internal conviction rather than external pressure. Third, his moral consistency. In conflicts with political power, he maintained his position even at personal cost. His willingness to accept exile reflects a prioritization of principle over convenience. Fourth, his spiritual framework. Anselm did not separate intellectual activity from spiritual life. For him, thinking about God was itself an act of devotion. His story also illustrates the complexity of his historical context. The Church was not isolated from political structures. Decisions about theology had implications for governance, authority, and social order. Anselm operated within this environment, navigating both spiritual and institutional challenges. Unlike saints associated with dramatic miracles or martyrdom, his influence is more structural. It is found in ideas, in methods, in frameworks that continue to shape theological thought. His writings remain relevant in discussions of philosophy of religion, particularly in debates about the existence of God and the nature of belief. At the same time, his life offers a model of disciplined inquiry. He did not accept faith as a static given. He sought to understand it, to articulate it, to examine its implications. This approach continues to resonate in academic and religious contexts. Saint Anselm's legacy is therefore not limited to a specific period. It extends into ongoing conversations about reason, belief, and authority. His life demonstrates that intellectual rigor and spiritual commitment are not mutually exclusive. They can, in fact, reinforce each other. He remains a reference point for those interested in the relationship between philosophy and theology, as well as for those examining how principles can be maintained in the face of institutional pressure. In summary, Saint Anselm of Canterbury stands as a figure defined by clarity, structure, and continuity. His contributions are not based on isolated events, but on sustained effort, a life of thought, a life of discipline, a life of coherence. And it is this coherence that continues to define his place in history. Pray for us, Saint Anselm. Comment what you thought of the story. If you liked it, leave a like. If you are interested in stories like this, subscribe to the channel. Thank you for your company. Enjoy and listen to our playlist of daily readings. May God bless this beautiful day.